Paranoia in isolation. The storm rolled down the mountains like an avalanche of gray. By the time Alex Porter guided his old Subaru up the last bend of the forest road, fat flakes were smearing the windshield into blindness, and the trees leaned in like dark sentinels. The cabin sat at the end of a crooked drive, half buried already, its roof frosted and white, the porch sagging with the weight of years and neglect. It wasn't much to look at, but it was what he needed: solitude. His therapist had called it a retreat. Alex knew it was an escape. Away from deadlines, away from the city's constant chatter, away from the mistakes he kept replaying in his head. The cabin belonged to a distant cousin who barely used it. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, but plenty of wood for the stove, the cousin had said on the phone, his voice faintly amused. Alex killed the engine. The silence that followed pressed on him, thick and absolute. No traffic hum, no barking dogs, no city air full of horns and sirens. Just the storm and the slow tick of the cooling car. Inside, the cabin smelled of old wood and dust. The floorboards creaked as though surprised to feel footsteps again. A single-room layout spread before him, stove in the corner, a sagging couch, bookshelves warped with damp, and a loft above accessible by ladder. The bed upstairs was narrow, but the quilts were thick. A stack of chopwood waited near the stove, and for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a flicker of relief. He set his bags down, lit the stove, and listened as the wind howled across the roof. Outside, the snow piled higher, sealing him in. Perfect, he thought. No distractions. No people. Just me. But solitude has a way of magnifying what you'd rather not hear. The first night, the storm sang its lullaby of shifting timbers and rattling shutters. Alex lay under the quilts, telling himself the groans of the cabin were natural. Every house had its voice. Still, when he drifted off, he dreamed of whispers threaded through the wind, low and urgent, words he couldn't quite catch. In the morning, the world outside was unbroken white. His car was little more than a berry hump. The road had vanished. He might as well have been the last man alive. He passed the time unpacking, making lists in his notebook, pacing the room. When he found an old trunk near the bookshelf, he tugged it open and discovered a scatter of belongings: a wool scarf, brittle letters, a leather-bound journal. He opened the journal and frowned. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was jagged, frantic. Don't stay past nightfall. The silence isn't empty. He flipped further, pages filled with scrawls. Drawings of dark figures with hollow faces, notes about footsteps in the loft, doors opening themselves. The final entry stopped him cold. It waits when you sleep. Don't listen to it. Don't let it in. He shut the journal, heart thudding. Someone's idea of a joke, maybe. Or the ramblings of a paranoid relative. By evening, the fire snapped, the storm eased, and the cabin felt almost cozy. He cooked pasta on the stove, poured whiskey, and tried to laugh at himself. Words in an old book couldn't hurt him. But later, as he climbed the ladder to the loft, he paused. A floorboard groaned above, where he knew no one was. He swallowed, forced himself up, and found the bed empty. Still, the sense lingered. Something had moved just before he entered. Part 3, Paranoia deepens. The next nights blurred together in a fog of little things. The sound of boots on the porch, though the snow remained undisturbed. A shape in the corner of his eye that vanished when he turned. The radio crackled to life once, though he hadn't touched it, whispering static threaded with what sounded like his name. Sleep became an enemy. Each time he drifted off, he woke certain that someone had been leaning over him, breath cold against his ear. Once he bolted upright, convinced he'd heard a child's laugh from beneath the bed. He tried to rationalize. Isolation plays tricks, stress distorts senses. But then came the footprints. On the fourth morning, he stepped outside to fetch more wood. The snow was pristine, except for the prints. A second trail beside his, smaller, barefoot. They led from the porch to the tree lean, vanishing into shadow. Alex froze, scanning the forest. Nothing but branches heavy with ice. He followed the prints a few steps before stopping. They were too perfect, too deliberate, as if laid for him to find. Back inside, he bolted the door, dragged the couch against it, and fed the fire until the room glowed. His hands shook as he poured whiskey. "Alone," he whispered. "You're alone. No one's here." The whisper that answered came from behind the couch. "Not alone." He dropped the glass, amber liquid spreading across the floorboards. When he spun around, nothing waited. Only silence. Alex stopped counting days. The snow outside grew into walls, higher than the windows. The sky remained iron gray. He ate from cans, burned through wood, and spoke less and less, afraid of what might answer. The whispers no longer hid in the storm, they prowled openly, circling him, mocking him. Sometimes they were in the loft. Sometimes beneath the floor. Once, when he dared the outhouse, they whispered from inside the trees, "Come with us." His reflection betrayed him. In the cracked bathroom mirror, his eyes didn't move in sync, his mouth lagged behind his words. He smashed the glass and avoided mirrors after that. One night, he awoke to the ladder creaking. A figure climbed slowly into the loft. Pale, child-sized, eyes hollow sockets. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing leaned close until he smelled earth and rot. "You let me in," it whispered, voice wet with hunger. Then it was gone. After that, the boundaries broke. Shadows lengthened into claws that scraped across the walls. His belongings rearranged themselves. The journal reappeared on his pillow, though he'd thrown it into the stove. Its pages now bore his handwriting, words he didn't remember writing. "You belong to me now." Alex begged aloud, "What do you want?" The answer hissed from every corner, "You." The final night began with silence. No storm, no creaks, no fire. Only stillness, as though the world held its breath. Alex sat by the dead stove, blankets wrapped tight, when he heard the knock. 3 slow raps on the door. The couch he'd shoved against it trembled. The knocks became pounding. He screamed, "Leave me alone." The door burst inward. Snow gusted through, and in its swirl stood the child thing, its shadow stretching impossibly long. Behind it, more shapes moved, tall, thin, faceless. Alex stumbled back. "You're not real." The thing tilted its head. "Real enough." The shadows surged, wrapping him in cold. He fought, clawed, but the dark seeped into his skin like ink into paper. His vision tunneled, the whispers filling his skull until they weren't whispers anymore, they were his own thoughts. The last thing he saw was the snow, endless and white, as they dragged him into it. When the storm cleared days later, rescue teams reached the cabin. They found the stove cold, the bed empty, the journal open on the table. The final line was scrawled in frantic ink. "I let them in." Outside, the snow bore 2 sets of prints, one booted, one barefoot, side by side, leading into the woods. And no one ever saw Alex Porter again.